The story begins with our female protagonist explaining that she is about to demolish a single-family home while operating an excavator. The reason behind this drastic action is quite absurd. The author of her favorite fantasy military novel, The Dawn of Repentance by Park Myung, killed off her favorite character. This novel had briefly become a hot topic during its early serialization due to its intense action scenes and the remarkable pace of releasing 10 episodes a day, almost like a factory. Despite its readability, characterized by one sentence per paragraph and scathing critiques, it became a legendary novel that captivated early readers. Some readers, including about 30 others like her, couldn't let go of this flawed novel, even up to episode 3504, fearing its cancellation if the trend continued. The reason they couldn't let go of this poorly written novel was simple. The episodes were crazy and the settings and characters felt incredibly real, almost as if they actually existed. The author was exceptionally skilled at creating settings, a true enthusiast in that regard. The protagonist was such a passionate fan that they even became the representative of the fan cafe. However, that all ended after today. The author shouldn't have sent Sayan off in such a manner. Sayan, who had survived up to episode 3503, was killed off by a mere disease, which felt unjust. While it was understandable for Mitchell to be killed off by a car, what really got to the protagonist was something else, perhaps an undisclosed setting or a special side story. The protagonist reflects on how the author had teased a solo episode for their favorite character Sayan, which had filled them with excitement. However, upon checking the latest episode, they were shocked to find that Sayan had been killed off, an unexpected and cruel twist. The protagonist considered the author to be a devil for this act. Fueled by a mix of gratitude and anger, they decided to repay the author by demolishing their house. As they operated the excavator, an earthquake occurred, causing the TV to turn on with breaking news about the tremor. Amidst the chaos, the protagonist realized they had borrowed the excavator and felt guilty for potentially damaging it. Despite their apology, they acknowledged that the owner might not understand their actions, driven by the emotional impact of losing their favorite character. In the end, they were advised to seek divine protection, accepting that it was too late to undo their actions. The protagonist questions the sudden use of archaic terms like divine protection and wonders if they were hallucinating about the owner due to being tired and stressed. They try to snap out of it, focusing on their mission to destroy the author's house. However, their vision blurs, and they realize they shouldn't be hitting their head recklessly. As they open their eyes, the steering wheel in their hand disappears, and a flood of unfamiliar memories rushes past them. They start to question their sanity, thinking the stress from the author's actions might be driving them crazy. While driving the excavator on the highway, they suddenly find themselves transformed into Mitchell Nephthis and in a state of imprisonment, leaving them confused and questioning why this is happening. Mitchell Nephthis is a character from The Dawn of Repentance. She is the daughter of Duke Nephthis and the heiress of the Nephthis dukedom, known for her magical abilities. With her silky silver hair and azure eyes, she is a notorious villain in the story, infamous for her nefarious deeds and commonly referred to as the Mad Woman of Nephthis, despite her villainous nature. She is one of the protagonist's favorite characters due to her fierce personality. Mitchell even pressured Prince Sayan to marry her, a vivid memory for the protagonist. In a particular scene, Mitchell lured a drunken Sayan from a palace banquet hall to a bedroom, using cheesy lines to pull him onto the bed. Sayan, with his impressive 29-inch waistline and long black hair cascading down, tearfully suggested that it might be better if Mitchell did as she pleased. This memory, however, conflicts with the novel's content, where Sayan would have rejected Mitchell. The protagonist is left puzzled by this discrepancy, questioning what could have caused such a difference between the novel and Mitchell's memories. The protagonist laments that the author left out an important episode, expressing frustration at not being able to destroy the house. They realize they have now become Mitchell, even though Mitchell is currently imprisoned. Reflecting on their situation, they note that in reality, there are no jobs for orphans in Sen, so their circumstances haven't changed much. They wonder why they suddenly possess someone and recall a hallucination they heard before hitting their head, thinking it might have sent them into the novel. They question why they were transmigrated at this particular moment, recognizing that Mitchell's imprisonment means she is as good as dead. In the original story, Mitchell taunts and pressures Sayan, leading to her being sentenced to death for insulting the royal family and ultimately dying in episode 121. The fact that Mitchell is still alive suggests it is right before she faces the death penalty. The protagonist, now possessing Mitchell's body, remembers the story vividly and feels confident, Knowing every detail of the setting, they declare that this kind of crisis is nothing to them, and they are ready to face it head-on. Mitchell Nephthis finds herself on death row, currently under the protection of Ursh, with 0 experience points. Her status window, which is typically seen only in novels, shows she has rare attack skills, and an ultra-rare skill named Fusion. This might explain the mix-up between her memories and those of the protagonist. Despite the intriguing skills, she is alarmed to discover her imminent execution, scheduled in just 3 days. She questions why she is on death row, and realizes that abnormalities in her status are natural before death. Desperate for a miracle, she begins to pray for salvation, confused and panicked by the unfolding events. The protagonist, now in the body of Mitchell Nephthis, struggles with the sudden shift to a historical drama tone. They recall the dignity of nobility, where members of the Nephthis ducal family bow only to the nobility of the Crotel Empire. Realizing that they need to act according to their own style, they call out for help, demanding to be saved. A guard, thinking they are crazy, reports the situation to higher-ups. After overcoming many hardships, including being expelled from the noble list by imperial decree and becoming stateless, Mitchell is finally set free after being whipped 5 times. Despite the pain, they feel relieved that their death row status has been lifted. Unlike in the original story where Mitchell chose death, the protagonist is determined to survive no matter what. With renewed resolve, they prepare to face whatever comes next, ready to fight for their life. The protagonist reflects on their backstory, recalling how they hit their head while on their way to destroy the author's house for killing their favorite character. This led to them waking up in the body of Mitchell Nephthis, a character from the novel, and finding themselves on death row. They ponder who Mitchell Nephthis is, realizing she is a ruthless character who exploited the prince's weakness and is the next duchess, known for her hot-headed nature. Now, under Ursh's protection and having escaped death row, the protagonist decides to invest in their experience points. They note that when they were released from prison, they received experience points due to changing the development of Mitchell's death in the original story. With a clear plan, they decide to focus on upgrading the freeze skill, aiming to acquire the superior ice magic skill. They believe that using this skill to subjugate monsters and earn money will help them survive, even as a stateless person. Their immediate priority is to find a means to make money and ensure their survival. The scene shifts to Nephthis's townhouse, where the carriage driver announces their arrival. Mitchell quickly disembarks, greeting and bidding farewell to the driver as she rushes inside, relieved to finally be home. She reflects on her recent expulsion from the Duke's house, and anticipates that her parents, the Duke and Duchess of Nephthis, will soon hear about it. Determined to leave before being kicked out with nothing, she plans to take all her luxury items, thinking that selling a few jewels will sustain her for a while. She wonders why Mitchell only collected gems instead of gold, which is easier to convert into money, but acknowledges that the amount is still substantial. As she is about to gather her belongings, someone opens the door. Mitchell fears it might be the Duke and his wife returning home before she is finished. To her surprise, it is Evan Laeff, Mitchell's nanny, who has been like a mother to her, raising her since childhood and scolding her whenever she got into trouble. Eleanor is immediately concerned about the blood on Mitchell's back, showing her deep care. Mitchell, touched by seeing her nanny in person, embraces her, expressing how much it hurts. Eleanor, equally worried, responds with concern. The nanny, Eleanor, concerned about the commotion and asking if Mitchell really received disciplinary action. Mitchell confirms, explaining that she almost got sentenced to death for attacking the prince and has now severed ties with the Duke's house, losing her noble status and becoming stateless. When Eleanor slaps her back in worry, Mitchell winces in pain, reminding her that she is on her side. Eleanor, worried about Mitchell's future, asks what she will do now. Mitchell confidently replies that she can do labor that even a stateless person can do, asserting that there is no rule saying she must die. Internally, Mitchell reflects on her past, contrasting her current situation with her previous hardships. She recalls being taken in by her aunt after her parents died, and having to do various part-time jobs to survive. Despite the challenges, she managed to get by, even eating cicada heads when necessary. Compared to those times, her current situation doesn't seem much different. She reassures herself that in 3 years, Mitchell will become an adult and be able to handle things on her own. Mitchell decides to take whatever she can and run away, but her nanny, Eleanor, insists on getting something first. Internally, Mitchell wonders if Eleanor is trying to give her money despite her meager salary. Eleanor declares that if Mitchell leaves, she will leave too, and returns with her baggage. Mitchell tries to calm her down, promising to keep her alive and suggesting they stay at her sister's old, empty house. Eleanor, worried about Mitchell's survival, insists on staying together, revealing that she can't live without Mitchell. Mitchell reassures Eleanor that she can live well on her own, but Eleanor is adamant about staying together. They decide to leave together, with Mitchell suggesting they visit the Savoy Hotel from Treasure Island and take the treasure map with them. Eleanor comments on Mitchell's unchanged personality, and Mitchell confidently states that she can handle raiding a treasure trove, especially since she has the key that only legitimate heirs of Nephthis can use. Despite being stripped of her status, Mitchell is determined to handle the situation and head to the treasure trove. Mitchell and her nanny Eleanor hurriedly leave the room. Eleanor urges Mitchell to find something quickly, and Mitchell manages to locate it, thinking it will help them open a gate. They rush to a carriage, and as they ride, Mitchell complains about the discomfort due to her back pain. Eleanor then hands Mitchell a child's biochip, explaining that it can help her live as a citizen of the Empire. Eleanor reveals that she raised Mitchell as her own child, and wants her to use the chip, which originally belonged to Eleanor's deceased child. Mitchell is deeply touched by this gesture and decides to call Eleanor Mom from now on, despite Eleanor's initial reluctance. They discuss the process of implanting the chip, with Eleanor insisting it must be done unexpectedly to avoid fear. Mitchell, still scared, screams in response. As they prepare for the retrial, Mitchell feels a mix of emotions, grateful for Eleanor's support and determined to face whatever comes next. Mitchell's back pain had now spread to her arms, making her uncomfortable. Eleanor asked her to verify if the biochip was functioning correctly, revealing that her child's name was Evan Laeff. Mitchell found the name agreeable and checked her status, noting her skills and experience points. She wondered if there had been some kind of collision or conflict, as having one person with two biochips was an interesting concept not mentioned in the original work. She discovered that Evan's biochip was newly implanted in her right arm, allowing her to access Evan's status window with her right arm, and Mitchell's with her left. Excited by this hidden setting, Mitchell examined Evan's skills, which included high levels in training and riding, and a legendary skill called Get the Hang of It, which made acquiring skills easier. Despite lacking attack skills, Evan's high-performance top-tier skills impressed Mitchell. She marveled at Evan's formidable abilities, feeling proud and amazed by the potential these skills offered. Eleanor anxiously asked Mitchell if the biochip was recognized. Mitchell confirmed that it had popped up properly, showing the name Evan Laeff. Eleanor was relieved, expressing gratitude that Mitchell, now registered as an imperial citizen, could live a normal life. Mitchell, reflecting on her past comfort, realized she would now have to live a much harder life. Internally, she wondered if Evan Laeff had any diseases, as his status showed a time-limited condition. Mitchell noted Evan's skills, including high levels in training and riding, and the legendary skill, Get the Hang of It. She questioned why the situation seemed practically over, as the Dawn had been reset with a condition of death upon failing to enter the Royal Crowley Academy. Panicking, she tried to calm herself, reminding herself that she had already lifted the time-limited condition once, and there was no need to overthink it. She decided to follow the Dawn's guidance, and told Eleanor, whom she now called Mom, that she should go to the academy, perhaps next year. Eleanor enthusiastically agreed, promising to prepare everything for admission and urging Mitchell to trust her completely. Mitchell internally reflected on the daunting task of raising the 100 million crowns needed for the academy's admission fee, especially considering her mother couldn't even secure her retirement pay. She wondered how they would gather such a large amount of money. Despite the assurance that entering the academy would lead to success in life, Mitchell knew that admission itself was a significant challenge. She realized that she needed to make money somehow, relying on her talents. To enter Crowell Academy as a commoner, Mitchell understood she had to be exceptionally smart, a great fighter, or a skilled magician. However, a bigger obstacle was the presence of the main couple from the original novel, who would enter the academy next year. She recalled that the academy during that season was a living hell, filled with dangerous devices meant to help the main character grow. These devices included a magic circle in the basement that opened a dungeon gate, and the summoning of one of the 4 great demon kings near graduation. The incidents led to a drastically reduced number of graduates that year. Mitchell realized that even if she enrolled, surviving until graduation would be incredibly difficult. However, not enrolling would mean certain death. Despite the high probability of dying even if she enrolled, Mitchell decided it was worth a try. She resolved to find a way to make money and prepare for the challenges ahead. believing that this was the method she needed to follow. Mitchell suddenly instructed the coachman to stop at the first inn, but then corrected herself, asking to stop at the next one instead. She reflected on her appearance, noting that she now looked like a perfect commoner. She explained that she had briefly disguised herself as Evan while stopping by the village. This disguise was necessary because Mitchell, being a slender and beautiful girl with brilliant silver hair and a doll-like face, needed to avoid being noticed by others. Using the money raised from selling valuables, she bought clothes and glasses to hide her beauty. She dyed her hair a subtly dull blue, wore unsophisticated round glasses, and braided her hair into 2 pigtails. As she prepared her disguise, her mother, Eleanor, expressed concern about sticking a needle into Mitchell's face to create freckles. Mitchell reassured her that the dye would fade over time. Despite the discomfort, Mitchell endured the process, even as Eleanor complimented her on her unsophisticated appearance, noting that she even smelled like chicken poop. Mitchell accepted the compliment, understanding the necessity of her disguise. Mitchell internally reflected that her new appearance would make it difficult for even those who knew her to recognize her. She wondered what she smelled like now. With everything ready, she was eager to get going. To pass the time, she asked Eleanor about her hometown. Eleanor mentioned a list of port cities, assuming Mitchell hadn't heard of them due to their rural nature. Mitchell thought Eleanor underestimated her knowledge. Eleanor spoke of a nearby city where a sparrow beast named Titi was caught and sold on the black market, and a bear beast named Menhil went to the capital to find Titi, becoming part of the protagonist's group. Mitchell recognized the place, noting it was near the Beast King Tower and had recently been developed. Eleanor confirmed that the activities of Beast Kings and monsters had expanded, creating more work in the area. She mentioned that the area around the monster habitat was good for growing magic stones, which were quite valuable. Mitchell, realizing the potential for profit, decided they should buy a pickaxe to mine and sell magic stones to earn the admission fee for the academy. Eleanor, anticipating this, agreed. After several days of travel and rest, they finally arrived at their destination. After arriving at the port city, Mitchell was surprised by its size and development, noting that the population could easily exceed 10,000 people. She understood the strategic advantage of being able to transport mined magic stones by sea. Eleanor led her to the house left behind by her sister, and Mitchell, who was used to living in a huge mansion, found it quite different. They decided to unpack and introduce themselves to the neighbors, recognizing the importance of connections in a small town. As they settled in, a man with a smile recognized Eleanor and questioned her sudden return with a child, implying there might have been an accident in the capital. Mitchell found the man annoying and confrontational, but Eleanor advised her to ignore him. The man warned them about the dangers of living alone in an old house without safety devices, suggesting they needed at least 1 pickaxe for protection. That night, Mitchell reflected on the man's advice, acknowledging the potential danger of living alone as 2 women. She decided to eliminate any risk factors, recognizing that the man, who often started arguments, could pose a threat. Determined to protect the peace between her and her mother, Mitchell resolved not to leave any threats unaddressed. When Mitchell was young, she threw a tantrum at Duke Nephthis and insisted on raising a drake, a subspecies of dragons, as a pet. She took care of the drake wholeheartedly, naming it and providing it with food. However, after a year, due to her negligence, the drake broke out of its cage, injuring 20 people before being subdued by the guards. This incident led to Mitchell being harshly scolded by the Duke. The reason for mentioning this story is to highlight that Mitchell has a past record of causing injuries. Additionally, the narrator, who used to work at an errand center, also has a history of subduing several bad guys. This combination of their past experiences suggests that together, they are capable of beating someone to death. The man who decided to mess with them chose the wrong people to provoke. Mitchell, holding a stick, contemplated hitting the man and throwing him into the sea after freezing his body. However, the man suddenly shouted that if they wanted to live there, they should find a good house downtown. Mitchell was confused, thinking he was just taking care of them despite his rude demeanor. She realized he might just be a tsundere, someone who acts tough but cares deep down, and almost caused trouble on her first day. The next morning, the man questioned how they planned to live in such a shabby house with a child, prompting Eleanor to tell him to shut up if he was there to help. Internally, Mitchell realized the man was actually close with her mom, and felt relieved she hadn't caused a bigger problem. She apologized to the man, who was confused by her sudden apology. Eleanor introduced him as Thomas, a man who had run away to become a pirate but ended up living as a fisherman. Despite his rough exterior, Mitchell understood he was just trying to help, even if his approach was abrasive. Mitchell introduced herself to Thomas, admitting she felt like a piece of trash for almost ruining someone's life. Eleanor, her nanny, was quick to refute this, but Mitchell internally justified her feelings, recalling how she almost harmed an innocent person. She realized that Thomas, being a fisherman with a ship, could potentially help her earn money. Mitchell proposed using her throwing skills to catch fish with a harpoon, but Thomas and Eleanor both opposed the idea, citing the dangers of the sea and her young age. Ignoring their objections, Mitchell thought about her plan to change the plot of The Dawn of Repentance by saving Titi, a character destined to die. She believed that altering the plot would earn her experience points, which she could use to acquire higher-level skills and make money. This in turn would help her enroll in the academy and remove her time-limiting condition. Mitchell wandered outside, wondering if she could find Titi by carefully looking around. She acknowledged that finding Titi in just one day was unlikely, so she decided to dig up magic stones to earn money. Over the next few days, she continued her search and efforts. One day, she noticed a person in a secluded place and initially thought it might be Titi. However, upon closer inspection, she realized the person had white hair and wasn't Titi. The individual's pupils and scales on their skin indicated they weren't human. Observing further, she saw the person feeding wandering beasts, likening him to a cat daddy. After a week of observing, the person approached her and asked if she was a minor. Surprised to hear his voice for the first time, Mitchell replied that she wasn't. The person simply acknowledged her response and left, leaving Mitchell puzzled by the sudden interaction. She decided to continue digging for magic stones and discovered she had acquired a mining skill despite not being a miner. She wondered if this was due to Evan's extra skill effect, which made acquiring skills relatively easy. Intrigued, she decided to test how well this new skill worked. Mitchell recalled a previous encounter where a beast, presumably Evan Laeff, challenged her to a match while she was mining for stones. She thought the beast's threat sounded familiar and realized it mimicked the way the King of Beasts spoke in the original novel. The King of Beasts, a white fox, was a gentle and generous character, known for his clumsy interactions with humans and unique way of speaking. Despite his short appearance, he was popular among fans, to the extent that there was an event in the fan cafe where people imitated his speech. Mitchell remembered an analytical essay on the King of Beasts' tone, which unexpectedly became useful to her. She deduced that the beast's threat to kill her was a way of ensuring her corpse could be collected, mimicking the King of Beasts' ruthless behavior towards intruders. When she confronted the beast about this, it confirmed her suspicion, realizing the beast wasn't actually the King of Beasts but merely imitating him. Mitchell assured it that she was joking about entering the king's territory. The beast, understanding her, offered to share its food as an apology, which Mitchell accepted. Mitchell asked the white-haired man how the food was, to which he responded that it was neither good nor bad. Mitchell corrected herself, saying it tasted like garbage before she swallowed it. The man apologized, explaining that he had never cooked before, which Mitchell found understandable given his lack of experience. Internally, she noted that he could unexpectedly talk nicely, and observed that the beasts were quite kind, providing food for wild animals. She found them better than people who acted like know-it-alls after a few encounters. Introducing herself as Evan Laeff, she asked for the man's name, who replied that he was Gert. Gert asked if Evan would come back the next day, to which she agreed, and he promised to return the favor. The next day, Mitchell was surprised to see an elaborate Korean ritual table prepared by Gert as repayment for the previous day. She asked if he had made all the food, and he confirmed with a proud smile. Despite her initial skepticism, she found the food delicious and joked that with such cooking skills, he could get married right away. Gert revealed that since he had a child, nobody wanted to marry him, which led Mitchell to realize he must be older than he looked. Gert then mentioned he had stopped counting his age past 500, astonishing Mitchell with his true age. Internally, Mitchell reflected on the original novel's mention that beasts are a long-living species, but she hadn't realized the extent of their longevity. She recalled that the elder of the beast species was 300 years old and looked like a wrinkled old man, which made her wonder what kind of beast Gert must be to look so young. She speculated that he might be a snake beast, given his youthful appearance and lack of aging. Gert confirmed her suspicion, explaining that he was indeed a snake beast and that his skin automatically shed, preventing wrinkles from forming. Mitchell found this fascinating and described him as super honey, a term she used to mean super nice, comfortable, and sweet like honey. Gert, intrigued by the phrase, began using it himself. Afterwards, Gert used super honey to describe various things, including lunch in Mitchell's home. Mitchell realized she might have taught him the phrase incorrectly, but since she understood him, she didn't mind. She just hoped he wouldn't use it in front of others. As she continued her work, she noticed there were no more stones in the area and wondered if that was all there was to find. Internally, Mitchell reflected on how it had already been a month since she escaped to the port city. With 126 days left until the break of her dawn, she and her mother were taking up all sorts of jobs to save money for her tuition fee, but it was proving to be very difficult. Realizing that gathering 100 million crowns seemed unrealistic at this rate, she decided to hide in Sir Thomas's ship to catch some fish, as her back was healing. She thought about finding a harpoon that fit her hands. Overhearing a conversation, Mitchell noticed her mother reminding her to say her hellos and goodbyes, a rule she had always emphasized. Mitchell greeted the people around her, maintaining her noble dignity. Two ladies commented on her bad mouth and pointed out a nasty bruise on a newlywed wife's face, explaining that her husband, who was usually normal, became violent when he drank alcohol. They pitied the woman and mentioned that they had asked her to report him, but she refused. Mitchell saw this as an opportunity to strike a business deal. She approached the woman, offering to fix her husband's bad habit, but clarified that it wouldn't be for free. The woman panicked, unsure of what Mitchell meant, but Mitchell introduced herself as Evan, who had recently moved nearby Captain Thomas's place uphill, and invited her to come by if interested. Mitchell, feeling accomplished after introducing herself, considered her preparations complete and pondered whether it was time to purchase her harpoons. She informed the man that none of the harpoons fit her hand and that she would need a custom order, asking for the price. The man, feeling offended by her lack of manners, demanded twice the price of those on display. Mitchell, in a threatening tone, mentioned that once the harpoon was ready, he would be the first to be skewered. The man then increased the price to 4 times. Mitchell, realizing the situation, tried to calm him down by saying it was a joke and asked for a discount. Internally, she reflected on how she had wasted half of her savings from selling stones. Later that night, Mitchell responded to a knock at her door, asking who it was. The woman she had encountered in the market earlier that day identified herself and asked to come in. Internally, Mitchell was surprised by the woman's quick arrival and noticed she had more bruises than before. The woman, stammering, asked if Mitchell could really help her. Mitchell assured her that she could, but mentioned that her services would cost more than 1 million crowns. She expressed anger at seeing the woman's bruises, which made her feel even more determined to help. The woman, however, admitted she did not have that much money. Mitchell proposed that the woman could pay in monthly installments of 100,000 crowns over 10 months, making an exception for her. The woman eagerly accepted Mitchell's assistance, and they decided to proceed immediately. Upon arrival, the woman hesitantly asked if Mitchell could truly fix the habit in question. Mitchell confidently assured her that she would monitor the individual until the habit was completely corrected. When asked about her methods, Mitchell downplayed the complexity, mentioning her experience dealing with similar situations at the errands center and her current skills. Suddenly, a shocked voice demanded to know who Mitchell was and why she was intruding. Mitchell, internally noting the person's quick resort to violence, threw a wooden chair at the man's face, questioning his upbringing and suggesting that such individuals yield more when met with equal force. The woman, surprised and frightened, Mitchell reflected on the request she had received to change a husband's habit. She decided to test the energy efficiency of her skill by locking him in a sauna until he fainted. She then used her freezing skill to push the limits of her abilities, noting that consecutive use of skills could lead to bleeding. This phenomenon, often referred to as the bloodshed 3-out technique, involves the consumption of mental power first, followed by stamina, and finally, vital force, with each stage marked by physical warnings like bleeding or coughing up blood. Mitchell observed that she had not yet coughed up blood while using her freezing skill continuously, indicating that her energy efficiency was better than expected. The man, in pain and confusion, screamed about his hand, questioning what Mitchell was doing. She noted that he was still lively despite the ordeal. Mitchell observed that the man was not fully sober yet and decided to begin the serious work. She questioned his earlier behavior and emphasized that he should have treated his wife well. The man, still defiant, claimed he had done nothing wrong. Mitchell, noting his continued drunkenness, prepared to use her skill. After 10 minutes, the man, now remorseful, begged for forgiveness, promising not to repeat his actions. Mitchell declared the issue resolved and requested an advance payment of 100,000 crowns. The woman quickly agreed to prepare the payment. Mitchell warned that she would be around the neighborhood and would return if she heard any rumors of negligence, threatening severe consequences if the man misbehaved again. The woman handed over the 100,000 crowns, and Mitchell told her to pay the rest when she could. She also offered her assistance in the future if needed. The woman, smiling, thanked Mitchell and wished her well. Mitchell reflected on how a week had passed uneventfully since her first day at the errand center. She noted that rumors had spread, leading people from neighboring towns to seek her services. By solving various problems, both big and small, she quickly earned 5 million crowns. Additionally, frequent use of her early key and throw skills while resolving incidents led to a rapid increase in her skill levels. Mitchell observed that Evan's skills, which quickly raised experience points, seemed to apply to her as well. She acknowledged that she must have earned quite a bit of money and decided to focus more on finding TT, as she needed to search diligently to prevent TT from being caught and sold. To aid in this, she invested her experience in the health skill, which seemed unremarkable at first, but proved to be quite effective. As she continued to improve, Mitchell was surprised by the sudden appearance of a detection skill. She wondered if this was also due to Evan's extra skill. Testing it out, she found that the detection skill allowed her to see topography in detail and hear even the smallest sounds clearly. She noticed the sound of birds chirping and wondered if it was coming from a specific direction. Mitchell was surprised to find TT so quickly and felt fortunate. Her goal was to gain experience, and she was curious about TT, a major character in the original work, as she had only seen Gert before. She wondered what TT would look like in reality. Hearing the bird's tweets, she looked over and saw TT stuck in a net. She couldn't believe how foolish TT was to get caught. In the original story, TT's capture and kidnapping seemed severe, and Mitchell wondered if such incidents led to TT being sold. She noted that birds could get trapped by the net's flimsy tension, which prevented them from taking off again. The solution was simple: release the net and let it fall. Mitchell thought TT was holding on to the net as if it were a life-or-death matter. Despite this, it was convenient for Mitchell to gain experience through this plot change. She reassured TT to stay still while she freed him, noting how large Sparrow's head seemed. Once TT was free, Mitchell was pleased to gain experience points. She bid TT farewell, advising him not to get caught again, and watched as TT flew away. Mitchell thought that the important part was just beginning. She had been curious about the 2 status windows that appeared, and wondered where the plot change experience points would go. First, she checked Evan's status, then Michelle's. She was thrilled to see the experience points coming in double and found it very satisfying. Michelle's freezing skill was her priority, and she noted that mining and detecting were necessary skills as well. The completed status window showed Evan's and Michelle's progress, bringing them closer to the freeze spell. She believed they only needed to change the plot a couple more times. Hearing tweets, she noticed the bird from earlier still around. She wondered if it had hurt its wing, and debated whether she needed to treat it, feeling it was acting ungrateful. Despite her frustration, she told the bird to go on its way and stop following her. She hoped it understood her words, thinking that even if it were a humanoid, it wouldn't be foolish enough to follow her again.